Hey, it's Broken Office Chair, a podcast produced by Alternatives. Broken Office Chair is hosted by Alternatives Executive Director Bessie Alcantara. Bessie is a Chicago native, first-generation Salvadoran Mexican-American who's passionate about dismantling systemic racism. In each episode, Bessie will be joined by her friends and colleagues who are ready to speak candidly about their experiences as people of color in their various professions. In the episodes, they'll address topics such as issues in the nonprofit sector, racial equity, DEI in practice, and much, much more.
Today, I am joined by the founder of Latina Rebels, storyteller, I already forgot how to say this word. Theologian and feminist. I don't know how I said it. And feminist, Prisca Dorcas Mojica Rodríguez. I got that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for being here. And I want to kick it off with one question. So I heard that you are first-gen immigrant and college, right? And our eldest daughter, first-gen. And so my first question is, are you okay?
No. Most of the time I'm okay. But I don't know. Are you an oldest daughter?
Yes.
Are you Yeah. It's pretty hard. I'm visiting home for the first time, staying with my parents since 2017 in December. So it'll be the first time that I allow myself to be vulnerable to their expectations and their everything. So I've just been preparing in therapy for it.
Good for you. I did a vacation with my mom and my brother in El Salvador last year, and it resulted in me and my mom not talking for 10 months.
Yep.
We were together for just 5 days. So I don't know. What has been like the largest thing, if I'm just straight up putting you on the spot, that you've had to process, like now that we're older and we can learn a little bit from how our parents did things?
I mean, it's come in waves, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been doing like the conscientization work, like I'm becoming aware of what's happening for a while. And now I'm at this stage where so everything was on the pendulum. Like a lot of shit was falling on me. A lot of expectations were on me. I was expected to be the therapist, the mediator.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of things and then I overcorrected. When I became aware of all of it and had names for it, I overcorrected and swung the other way. So I started to be like honoring my mom because of the ways that I was taught that my dad and men were the pinnacle. Understanding the language around it meant that I was kind to her and I was kind of building that relationship, and I started to reparent her in a lot of ways. Because I became aware of the ways that why she did the things that she did, why she said it, why she was cruel sometimes. So I started to overcompensate. And then now I'm at this stage where that got exhausting. And it was post COVID that I was like, no, I'm still your daughter. And I need you to, if I state a need, I need you to honor it. And that's resulted in conflict, in me being like, I'm not your parents. I shouldn't be nicer to you than you are to me.
Yeah.
So I've been in that stage of it. So yeah, it's been like a journey, I think, as we become aware of this stuff, how we react to it, and then how we react to our own reactions to it. It's all a process.
I feel like I'm at the point where I'm trying to accept that my mom can't show what I would like for her to show, due to all of her trauma. And I was able to set some boundaries over time. But I think this last conflict that we had was about me not being able to accept that she's just not going to be able to handle it in the way that I think it should be handled, as constructive to adults being able to process an issue. She just is going to need to pretend like it never happened and move on.
I'm in the stage where I won't let her pretend anymore. I'm like, I won't let you pretend anymore. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about it.
Nope. I literally tried that and it just did not work out. And I was like, I have this conflict, right? And I think my conflict is about like our parents getting older, and I have friends whose parents are passing. And so like I want to preserve some sort of relationship with her. And so like what
Yeah.
does that look like if accountability can't be a part of the conversation? And so that has been my struggle.
Yeah. I think it is I think so there was a point in my time there was a point where I decided that I needed to draw boundaries and our relationship was going to be different. And I accepted, I grieved that I might not be able to see them before they died. I'm past that point where I'm
Mhm.
like, I've done enough healing that I don't feel like they can trigger me in the conversations, because that's what's always gone wrong, is that
Right.
I've had a strategy to talk to them, but then and we're good and I'm confronting them and we're talking, but then she says something. I mean, they're the ones who created our triggers, so they know exactly what to say.
Mhm.
And I would spike, and then the conversation would be over because I knew I would cross the line. So
Mhm.
I'm at a new place where I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna spike. I know to see the trigger. I know what the triggers are. I know how to soothe myself. So what does that look like now? Let's go.
Yeah, I will have to take tips from you at some point because I thought I was there until I had 5 days.
2 weeks. I'm going almost 3 weeks to Miami at their house.
Yes.
I'm like, let's test all the skills. I know I'm not paying 190 a therapy session for nothing.
That's, I think, probably where I went wrong. I didn't adequately prepare myself because I thought I had it. We hadn't had conflict in years, so I definitely thought that I had it. Did not have it. Did not. Um, but I think one of the reasons, so I found your account when I found the Latina Rebels account when I was trying to find on social media a voice that better represented my experience. And so, because we work in the social justice sphere, I found myself following a lot of Black accounts specifically. But I think there's also like a uniqueness when you have family that comes from a different country and being raised in those in that dual cultural environment. And so, my question is like, what kind of provoked for you to start this?
Um, I think it was when so I didn't get access to this information in my undergrad. It was in grad school. And it also was the first time I was around primarily white people. It was a lot of little things. And so I was like, I know what it took for me to get to Vanderbilt, and I know how many people don't get that opportunity. So how do I make a place online where I make the same information that I'm learning in a classroom, getting a student loan debt for free and accessible and funny, and like have provide that commentary in ways that normal people can digest it and be like, oh yeah, I know what toxic masculinity is now, or whatever. So it was out of a desire to to not feel so alone in Nashville, and B, it was like, how do I make this stuff accessible to people who don't have access to these very elite and violent spaces?
Sorry, my dog keeps barking off and on, and so I have to like mute and do all these things. But did you expect the response that you have gotten to your stuff?
Never, never, ever. I could have never planned it. I could have never. There's people who like now when they're like, let's start a page. They do a strategy, they do photo
Mhm.
shoots, they do a mission statement. None of that. No, no plan. It was like a 30-second decision out of a frustration. And because it was Cinco de Mayo uh in Nashville, Tennessee, where I don't know about you, but Cinco de Mayo has only become really big, I feel like recently. In Miami, nobody, Cinco de
Mhm.
Mayo came and went and nobody did anything about it. It was suddenly when I was in Nashville that it was like this huge celebration that white people love to,
Mhm.
drink Cinco de Mayo. And people would just come up to me and be like, are you Mexican? And of course you're Mexican, and just that stuff. So it was out of that frustration that I just was like, whatever, I'm gonna make this page. I'm like, I'll find my friends online if I have to. And then suddenly it just grew and
Yeah.
it grew and it continued to grow. And it's just, I'm just watching it. I'm watching what it spawns. I know who's copying, who copied what, because there wasn't millennial Latinx media wasn't a thing. People weren't marketing to us. It was very much
Right.
like Univision, Telemundo, and that's
Which
and
are
so
problematic within it themselves. Mm-hmm.
yes, and so to have a young English speaking platform for radically left Latinas was just different.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an audience. So then suddenly all these Me Too came out of nowhere. Like all these new places came, BuzzFeed, the Latino section, whatever they called it, like all that started being created because they were seeing that there was an audience to be had and to be make money out of. But I've been paying attention to just how the landscape has changed, who's copying, who's thinking, who's creating and spawning off of it. And I'm just like, this is good. This is good. This is the point.
Yeah, to have more people being able to have the conversation about the issues and also other folks' issues too. Like, because I find that your page can also be like a resource for just things that are going on and having an additional voice. And so for me, that's super helpful.
Thank you. It is because it's issues that I care about. It's issues about. It's also why it's never just been me
Mm-hmm.
too. It's been other Latinas in it, and so what are we interested in? What are we reading about? What are we like? And the team has changed several times throughout the years. So different interests spike up. Like we had somebody who was really into cannabis. So it was a lot of Latinas in cannabis content for a while. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
been very carefully curating who comes in and out of the space to make it really a wide net because we're not a monolith, because we're not
Right.
all interested in the same thing. Because if every post that is posted people love with indiscriminately, then I don't know, that just doesn't feel true. It's for a wide audience.
And also, we're not all Mexican. Back to your earlier point.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, there's over 30 countries in Latin America, and I'm in Chicago, and people are always like, "Are you Mexican or Puerto Rican?" I'm like, it's not just those two choices.
Yeah, yeah. Get it together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And such a different experience, I think, depending on where your family's from, where you're from, and what's currently happening. I know that you've been talking quite a bit about what's been happening in Nicaragua. And there's not a ton of info out there on Nicaragua. Why do
Yeah.
you think that is?
The same thing that's happening with Israel and Palestine. The US is very strategic about the information that they let us know, and they have a very strategic agenda against socialism. And so any government in our countries is doing socialism is going to get vilified. It's just, and the minute that they start being maybe corrupt or maybe doing things that aren't correct, the US is quick to point at them like, "Ooh, look what you did. We told you it didn't work
Mhm.
out." And instead of like, no, there's a system in place that you have created for these governments to hit a demise. Like they've placed an embargo in countries that are trying to be revolutionary, that are trying to be equal for everyone, that are prioritizing the citizens instead of foreign US coming and buying land so they can have coffee beans or whatever. Like
Mhm.
governments who are very pro their people, the US hates them. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to find information that's reliable. And then our governments get paranoid because they're like, you're just doing that because you don't know better, or we don't want you to say that because then the US is going to use that against. It's all a really bad cycle that the US is at the center of creating. But they're quick to be like, oh, we're the greatest country in the world. What do you mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's the politics that the US just meddles in that messes up all the information that we could possibly get.
And I think to see Western media tell it, the US, I think a lot of folks only see when the US provides aid, does not see all of the destabilization that happens behind the scenes, how we protect certain interests. And it was through, like, I love to travel. And I was just telling my team that it wasn't till I started traveling that I saw how often we were on the wrong side of history, because other museums would tell the stories of US involvement. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea that the US funded the South African apartheid and things like that. And that was an eye opener, but I never heard about it here.
Yeah, our education system is part of it. It's why pages like Latina Rebels, I felt like, needed to exist, because we
Mm-hmm.
needed a different narrative, and we needed somebody who wasn't being paid by a board of, that's why people don't say the things that they're supposed to say. They have boards and they have people funding and advertisers. And so I'm just like, we are responsible to no one. So
Yeah.
we could actually say it.
It's kind of ironic that I'm talking to you about this today, because as a nonprofit, we have a board and we have committees and things like that. And we released a statement on the current conflict. And we've gotten some backlash. And so I've been on the phone. I'm lucky in that my board is extremely progressive and they doubled down in their support. And so they're just
Good.
like, it's okay. However, the backlash, I'm like, this is how we learn to be silent right
Yeah.
here. Because it's,
Yeah.
I like was telling my team, I'm like, I can't even eat right now. I'm so anxious from the comments that we've gotten. And I'm like, what privileges it is at the same time to be talking about a couple of emails and the loss of some funding, as opposed to the loss of food, water, shelter, family members, your own life, right? But it's still a little nerve-wracking when we're used to so much privilege.
And it's real power exerting and showing off its muscles is very scary. And it's
Mm-hmm.
felt through funding. It's felt through people getting fired. I've seen people get fired. I've seen people get speaking engagements canceled hours before they were doing it. I like it has real tangible consequences, because that's people's livelihoods. Like,
Right.
power's scary, and it does show off its muscles in these little ways that are terrorizing. It's like, yes, it can't be compared, but it also is a valid anxiety, and it's a valid place of fear, because we know what that power does is that it continues to fund wars. It continues to like keep Black and brown people behind bars. Like, that power is bigger also. So when it sort of flexes on us, it's like, oh, why am I so scared? It's just an email, but it's no, it's like scary because it's bigger than the email, and you know it, and I know it.
Yeah. And then also, I think you put that next to the fact that you have to work so hard to get to certain positions of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I have a little bit of influence as an executive director of a business, and then all that could quickly be taken away because I made the wrong move.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put that in quotations, the wrong move, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of watching this dynamic play out currently. And we've seen it several times over the years for different issue areas that we've wanted to speak up about. And so a little bit of what we have to do when we're talking to our employees is talk about the nonprofit industrial complex and why this is not necessarily where the revolution will happen. You have to like support causes like yours in order to be able to see it, because our livelihoods are so intertwined with how we show up to this cause.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell yeah.
We
Yeah.
call it when you start to learn about it, we call it we're starting to call it the heartbreak. When was your heart first broken by nonprofit? Because you learn that this is not where radical change typically happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I did the heartbreak of a nonprofit thing for a bit, and yes, I understand that. You're like, wait, but we're just here to help children. Yeah.
No, we're not here
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also just kind of want to like switch gears a little bit and ask you what prompted your book?
Um, it it'd be a lie to say that that was like ever a thought I had. Like, I think it's really, I don't know, maybe now more people think of it, but I wasn't, people didn't support me. Even in grad school, like, people would roll their eyes when I would talk in class. And I didn't experience people being like, oh, what you're saying is important, except online. And so it
Hmm.
felt I still talk about it with my therapist, the dissonance of like my real life versus like my online life. It is like a stark contrast to me. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Like, I'm still treated like I don't look like a white person. Nobody would mistake me for a white person if they squinted a little or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I still experience everything that happens when you don't look like a white person in Nashville, Tennessee. So when I started getting support, it was people fueling people like you, people who had like a proximity to power and were like, what am I gonna do with this? And it was through Instagram captions that the Huffington Post reached out to me on a Facebook direct message and was like, you should write for us. And it took me like 6 months of writing for them for me to realize. I remember talking with my editor and being like, I think I'm gonna start calling myself a writer now. And she's like, what? You've been writing for 6 months for us? Yeah, you're a writer. Because people have told me I couldn't write. People have told me I should try to write in Spanish. Like it just doesn't, that type of encouragement is weird. And then it was just, I was writing blog posts and little, wherever people would let me write for like $50 or $75. The most I got paid at that point was maybe 125 for one piece. But I wrote like five articles a week for 3 years straight and making like barely 13K. Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of like Huffington Post, if you get brought in for their like Latino voices or Black voices, that's free labor. They're not paying. It's for the visibility. So I'm writing a lot, barely making ends meet. And then in 2017, my literary agent sent me a direct message on Twitter and was like, hey, I would like to help you write a book. And I was like, what? What? Who does that? What does that even mean? I don't know anything about publishing. I didn't know that you needed agents. I didn't know what it took to write a book. He taught me everything I know in terms of selling a book. And I met him in 2017, but the whole thing felt like a lie that I got a nonprofit job in 2019 and my book sold that year. Like he submitted my proposal and it sold that September. And so I quit my nonprofit job and started working on the book. But like I remember even when I got the phone call that people were interested in buying it and it was going to a bidding war, I cried. When I signed the contract and had to start writing the book, I cried. When I got paid like 5 months later, and I was like, well, this is real. It's not just like a con. I cried. And then I was like, fuck, now I have to write this book. And so I wrote the book, but it's just kind of like, I don't know, Sherry Moraga has this quote, like, nobody ever told me I could be a writer. I just went ahead and did it anyways. That feels like what happened. I never imagined that a book was possible. Even when I had a literary agent, I thought he was a liar and just a con artist until I had a book deal. And then I had to write the book, and I was like, I guess I'm gonna write a book. I didn't even know I could, but let's do it. So it kind of was just a scary happenstance of a lot of little things.
I love how real you're being about this though, because I think these are the stories that folks need to hear. I was just telling my team, I am getting an award on Friday, and it's partly for my racial equity contribution to the field. And I was like, this is the most validating thing I can get, even though it wasn't the highest visibility thing at the time of all the things that were happening. It was one of the most validating, because I was like, this feels validating for all the times that folks just like hated me for speaking up or did not take me seriously. Like I've had to leave activities that I love because they become so uncomfortable because people just don't like me. And I'm like, it's nice to get something else somewhere else to be like, okay, you're not completely wrong or off, or any, like you're doing something right, because everything else could just feel like negative noise in your head.
100%. So it's like, how do you feel being an ED at a nonprofit and getting awards? I bet it feels a little bit like, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also like, not just like what, but also like to see my name on things, because I have been very clear about one thing. It's that it has not been a solo effort ever. It's been
Yeah.
like right now I have my 2 team members sitting here to make this podcast happen, right? And so it's been like the people who have invested and believed in it and all of these different things that made it happen, or wrote to you to get you to come on the podcast, right? That was my assistant Deanna. Like, so it's all these folks that make it happen, and then I see just my name on it, and it's like it doesn't even
Yeah.
feel right.
Yeah. I get that completely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a million and one questions, but that's why I'm kind of like pivoting, because I was like, oh, while I have you. Um, so I have a couple of minutes, but I wanted to address something that you said. I wanted you to just expand on it. And it was when I was going through your stuff, I saw a comment around how reclaiming your brownness helped you like decolonize your ideas of beauty. And I wanted you to just take a couple of minutes to talk about what that means for folks.
It was a lot of things. I think growing up, I grew up in Latina communities, non-Black specifically Latina communities, and we're pretty awful with each other, especially if we like are brown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you get a lot of anti-Indigenous backlash because
Mm-hmm.
we're already very anti-Indigenous. That's been part of like how we've had to survive colonization, is to side with our oppressors as people who are mixed,
Mm-hmm.
and not just still Indigenous and living in our communities. So there's a lot of very heavy-handed anti-Indigenous dialogue in our communities. And so to look more Indigenous has meant that I've been called ugly by Latinos. I've been boyfriends have brought me to meet their parents, who have been like to my face, like that's the one you brought home. So like I have understood myself, and I would constantly say, I'm not pretty, but I'm funny. That's like a
Oh.
way that I would think of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it took me reclaiming Indigenous ancestors, reclaiming my looks as beautiful, like being like, okay, I'm being told I don't look pretty, and yet I feel pretty. Like, and it's specifically because of my flat face, because of my higher cheekbones, like the things that I knew were what people considered as Indigenous. But it took me doing a lot of that work, changing the way that I dress. Just it's been painstakingly a long process to be like, I am beautiful because I'm brown. And that's just been the experience that I've had. And it's part of, I think, what makes my specific work, I think, successful, is also because people, if we see Latinas who are successful in the US, in Hollywood, in in media, a lot of them are white or white passing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think when people see me, they're like, oh, and she's saying shit that she shouldn't. Yes. So
That's
I
what
think,
resonates with me.
yeah, I think it's been a blessing to
Mhm.
find people. Now people come up to me and they're like, "You're so pretty," or "You're so much prettier than I thought you." I'm like, "Wow, this is a
That's not a
new
compliment.
framework." I know. But it's a new framework for thinking about yourself when all your childhood, that is not the way that people talked about you. That is not the stories your parents told about you when they showed me to my grandparents, to people at church. People had opinions since I was a little girl. And those are the stories that formed me. And so to know that now there's this counter narrative, and there's people who really resonate with my work because specifically I look the way that I look, has been really powerful, I think, for me and for the people who are reading.
Do you have anything that you want to leave listeners with?
Okay, so I cuss a lot,
I
but
usually
it
do
is
too.
okay, good. But it is intentional. I think it's important. I think that when we look the way that we look and have the titles and the careers that we have, there's this idea that we're supposed to sound different and be
I hate that.
different and dress.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I love cussing just to bring people back a little, to be like, oh yeah, and I'm still a successful author.
I love it.
I have a lot of words in my backpack, but I'm gonna use fuck instead. Like it's
Mhm.
just seeing spaces that have expectations that are placed on me. And that's just a clarification in the back end now that I've cussed up a lot in the podcast.
No, I am completely on the same page. I purposely show up to stuff casually dressed. I'm in a like literally in a t-shirt right now. I purposely curse through things, everything. I also purposefully like don't use complicated language because I'm like that how I speak has nothing to do with me being smart. How I look has nothing to do with me being smart. So I'm on the same page with you on all of that. I want to be just ask like what would be the for folks trying to like I think I want you to give like a motivational advice type of thing, even though I'm putting you on the spot at the last minute. Like, what is the one life advice thing that you would give folks?
I think especially now, as people are speaking up about particular topics, as we're having conversations around Palestine, I think it's good to remember a lot of us were screaming that Black Lives Matter like 2013, 2014, and people didn't like that. And so to be against the mainstream, I think is often a sign that you're probably thinking critically about the things you need to think critically about. And so there will be consequences to us doing and saying the things that we do, because that is how the system maintains the status quo. But that eventually things turn around. People are just behind often.
Yeah.
And stay firm, because this stuff matters. It's always mattered. And there's always been a very small group of people who have screamed at the top of their lungs and been thrown stones at. So I think keep screaming, because things turn around eventually.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And so
Thank
your account at
you.
Latina Rebels for folks who are interested. But yes, I appreciate you making the time for us.
Yes, thank you for having me. And the internet worked.
Thanks.
Bye.
To keep up with everything going on at Alternatives or to donate, you can visit us at our website, alternativesyouth.org. You can also follow us at Alternatives Inc. on Instagram or at Alternatives Youth on Facebook. If you want to keep up with Bessie, you can follow her on Instagram and TikTok at Bessie_Alcantara. Thanks for listening.